All right, welcome to the stream, everyone. My name is Doña, aka Doña the Light. This is my daily mental health chat stream. Yeah, so today I have a very special guest, a very near and dear friend of mine. Let me put my phone on silent. Diana Robinson. She's an incredible woman. Really quickly, if you're catching this stream live on Twitch, please feel free to contribute in the chat. Today, we're going to be asking Diana some questions. If you're catching this replay on YouTube, feel free to leave your thoughts and opinions in the comment section. Jones is here first in the chat. And if you're also catching this replay on YouTube, just subscribe. Come on, just do it. It's free. It helps me. It helps everyone. Just do it. So welcome, Miss Diana. If you'd like to go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Doña. I am very excited to be here. So as you mentioned, I'm Diana, and I am a clinical psychologist in training. I am in the progress of earning my clinical psychology doctorate. I'm a student at Northern Illinois University, but I am a Southern California native. Baby, don't get it twisted. I am only in Illinois for school. I have been in school for a very long time, my entire life pretty much, just kind of exploring my academic journey, figuring out where I wanted to go. I stumbled into clinical psychology kind of along the way and found that to be my calling. And so now I am working my way through that degree towards working with veterans. So I'm actually specializing in a trauma focus. So I really spent a lot of my clinical psychology education time really focused on learning how to assess and treat PTSD and other trauma-related disorders, and learned a lot of just the kind of the ins and outs of that area of psychology. So that is the area that's really near and dear to my heart, and working with veterans is something that I'm aspiring to do at the moment. And so, just a little bit about me. I'm excited to just share the benefits of my experience and anything that y'all want to know. I'm an open book, so
yes, absolutely.
I'm happy to share.
Raylene is here. Hi, Raylene. Raylene, this is a perfect opportunity. Raylene, this is my wonderful friend Diana. She's a clinical psychologist in training, and if you have some questions that you would like to ask her, that's why she's here today on the stream. Essentially, today is Ask a Therapist Anything Day. Diana and I were having a conversation yesterday. Good morning, Fergie. Welcome in. About, just conversations that we've had here on the stream. In the chat, I shared that Raylene has shared some things about her personal experience with her therapist. And so Diana had mentioned already, her, I guess, the way that her path has taken her into clinical psychology as far as working with veterans. And I'd like to ask, Diana, what specifically about that population brings them so close to you and kind of drives you to want to support them?
That's a great question. I honestly did not realize that was the population that I would be so moved to work with. But reflecting on it, I have many veterans in my family, and just within my circle, that I'm not a veteran myself. I'm not connected to the military other than through my family, but I feel like I've gotten a pretty good understanding of some of the things that they might experience, and through my doctorate program, I had the opportunity to do a practicum experience at a VA, which was just really pivotal in my training. That was the first time that I had any clinical experience working with veterans, and it was just the most rewarding experience that I've had clinically.
Gotcha.
Working with individuals who are coping with PTSD and really trying to just maintain their lives within that is just something really remarkable to watch, and being able to join them on their journey of recovery was extremely rewarding and really just fulfilling. It was just a really challenging but rewarding population to work with.
I feel that.
Just being able to see how impactful therapy, mental health services can be in their lives. Many folks who don't trust the mental health industry, don't trust the VA,
Right.
Rightfully so in many cases. it presented a lot of challenges, but it was, again, something once we kind of broke through some of those barriers and were able to really do some good work together. Yeah, it was just life changing for them and for me. So it's something that I'd love to continue to do.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And we also talked about the misconception that all veterans are like 85-year-old guys, when in reality, like you mentioned, you've worked with very young veterans. Because a veteran just means that you've been in the military. It doesn't mean that you specifically were, involved in World War II or World War I. I believe actually Fergie is a veteran. So Raylene says hi, Diana. Fergie says hi, Diana. They're here in the chat hanging out with us today. And I believe Fergie is a veteran. So another question I would ask are, what are some questions or maybe some things that you can do as a client who's seeking out a therapist? Like, what are some questions that you could think of to ask in those first couple sessions?
I think that's really important. I feel like, finding the right therapist can be a challenge as well. Because it's not just it's not just finding a person who can just listen to what it is that you're struggling with, but it's really about a personality match, and it's also about kind of goal matching in a way. Like, I think it's important to understand the kind of the perspective or the theoretical orientation that your therapist is working from, because that can really determine how y'all work together, right? It can be if you have someone who is more of a supportive therapist who provides more of just kind of what we consider kind of talk therapy, where you're just coming in and talking about your stressors from the week, and just kind of talking through that, having somebody kind of bounce your thoughts off of. That's one version of therapy, and that's very helpful for a lot of people. Other folks are looking for something a little bit more structured, a little bit more, with maybe like skill building and things like that. And so it's important to know whether or not your therapist is someone who is going to be providing you that type of structure, or if they're going to be more in the talk therapy zone. And so I think understanding what it is that you're hoping to get out of therapy, as well as understanding what your therapist can provide in that journey, is really important. So just asking them kind of what is your background, what is your what is kind of how do you approach therapy? It feels like a weird question to ask your therapist coming in, but it's a completely justified one, because it's okay if y'all don't mesh, right? There are lots of other therapists in the world. Your therapist is going to have clients, like, it's going to be fine. You're not going to hurt their feelings if y'all don't.
Right.
Like, it's totally
they
fine.
Need my money.
Right? It's totally fine. Most therapists are really genuinely there to help you find, the support that you're looking for. And if they're not the ones that can provide that, it's better to know that up front than, 3 months down the line, you're like, okay, I really don't know what we're doing here.
Right.
So I think just asking what their perspective is really important. Kind of asking what, kind of just how they approach therapy, and how they structure their sessions as well, right? Like, are they flexible with how you schedule things? Do they expect you to sit into one time slot each week, and you've got no wiggle room because they're booked?
Right,
and so I think just really taking some time to understand how they run their business, how they approach therapy, whether or not they understand the struggles that you're coming in with. Because there are a lot of different areas of emphasis rather than specialty. But so for instance, like, I emphasize in trauma focused training. I have training in other realms of clinical psychology and other evidence-based practices, but my main emphasis is trauma treatment. So for other folks, it might be sleep disorders, it might be anxiety, it might be phobias in general, OCD. Right? So it really depends on what it is that you're looking for, and really just taking some time to ask them some questions, right? Like, getting to know your therapist sounds like a weird thing. Like, you're not getting to know their background, like, personal, like, hey, tell me about your mom, tell me about your family. No, tell me about you professionally. It is completely okay to ask those questions up front to really get a feel for who your therapist is, right? You don't just have to walk in and sit on the couch and just accept, this is who I am.
Yes,
right?
Exactly.
And I think that's oftentimes how people might approach it, because it's it's not that accessible. And so when you get
Yeah.
a therapist, it's like, oh, okay, I got this. I'm going to have to just roll with whatever we got.
Yep.
And that's not the case, you know, because that's going to be, that can be damaging. Not
Yeah.
necessarily harmful, but that can be damaging to your progress and your journey of healing.
Right.
So yeah, I think it's really just important to take stock into what it is that you're hoping to get out of it, and express that up front as well. Like,
Yeah,
what
I
are
think
you
that's important for people to
expecting
even
to get out of
have an idea of upfront, before you even, because we're constantly, of course, encouraging people to seek therapy, but,
it?
take a moment to come into a little bit of awareness, what do I want to get out of this? Even if it's just, being more aware of, I would like for someone to listen, but I would also like for someone to give me support, because I can, maybe you already have someone who can listen, who has the bandwidth in your life to listen, but they're not the best at giving you support, and, it's not really their job. But, I think that's a really, really great question. And to your point about just kind of approaching therapy as far as you get what you get, I feel that's something that we kind of have to break within the entire medical field, You get an OBGYN, you kind of just get what you get. You get a family practice physician, you kind of just get what you get. And
Right.
it's not necessarily regular or standard practice to kind of shop around when it comes to dentists or medical, you know what I mean, professionals, things like that. Really quickly, Raylene would also ask, what would you say are some green flags for a therapist from a client's point of view?
Ooh, I love that question. Green flags, I would say, is a therapist who includes you in like the treatment planning process. Like we call it shared decision making, right? And so you don't want to be railroaded through your therapy process, right? Like you want to be included in what it is that you're doing. And I would say a green flag is also someone who checks in with you regularly, not just in terms of like, hey, how you doing, right? Because that's the basis of it. So no, not
Right.
more so, how is this actually working for you? Are there things that that I'm doing that you really appreciate or that you're benefiting from? Are there things that you do not like or appreciate and really make the space open for criticism? And this is your hour. You're paying for this. I want to make sure that you are getting the most out of it. And not to say that to expect to come in there and just run the session yourself, right?
Right.
Like, oh, I need to talk about this therapist, but just somebody who's willing to kind of to go where you need to go sometimes, but also just check in and see how things are going. Someone who is willing to acknowledge their own mistakes. And just be a human in the room and acknowledge those things. Like, oh, I messed up. Like, my bad. This is how we can move forward from that. Those are the ones that come to my mind immediately.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the including you in the decision making, because that feels like, the kind of teamwork that a therapy session should be, And again, that's just going back to the medical field in general. I mean, I share with everyone that will listen how different it was with this pregnancy with my youngest son to have a midwife versus an OBGYN. Like, I had my first 2 appointments maybe with a regular OB. And I kid you not, I went into one of the appointments. He puts his hand on my belly and he's like, yeah, everything feels great. And I was like,
seriously, like, what
you got magic? What are we what are we doing? But again, there's no excuse me, there's no communication as far as, how is this working for you? Because most people in the medical field, I mean, across all kinds of different, I don't want to say genres, but kind of, from general, medical doctors to dentists are in such a hurry because they have such a booked schedule, and that just goes into insurance and billing and all that fun stuff. But, yeah, and you just don't have that point. Whereas, my appointments with my midwife, it was just me and her. My appointments were like an hour long. I really got to know her as a person, which just kind of happened inadvertently, but I had questions, like about my previous pregnancy and about my previous delivery and things like that. And everything was shared decision making. Like, she shared with me, when he's born, we have the option of doing a vitamin, I think it was vitamin K. We can either do a shot or you can do drops, And she said, you can give me an answer now, but once he's born, we're going to ask you again. We had an option of delayed cord clamping and all these things. And again, it was like we're having this conversation now, but once we get to that point, since there is an end goal with pregnancy, so, have the baby, we had the conversation again and we revisited it. And it was never like, I have to know now and I'm going to record it and hold you to it and you can't change your mind.
Right. You have the option to change your mind.
Yeah, like it's an inconvenience or something. But yeah, so that I really like the shared decision making. Oh, baby. Yeah, the cough is real. Raylene also said, yeah, it's important to have trial sessions, maybe with a few different therapists at the same time, so you can compare them instead of settling for the first person you get. Absolutely.
I think that's a good. So yeah, that's an interesting idea. So like. The first few sessions typically are those like getting to know you sessions, like we call them like intake, right? So we're doing, well, I guess it kind of depends on how the practice is set up, but how, like currently in my training, we, like I would do an intake and then I might take on the client myself, and so, you'd have that intake session, you'd have the first few sessions of really just what we call building rapport and information gathering and. Just really getting to know what your treatment goals are. And so if that's something that you do with a few different people to really understand how they approach that, how your personalities match, I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah.
I don't recommend taking a full course of therapy with 2 different therapists.
That would be...
for various different reasons. But at the outset, like you said, kind of shopping around to see who is the best fit. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Because ultimately, again, this is your hour, this is your journey, this is, this is you making it what you want to get the most out of it. And so you want that to be with somebody who is going to, just, again, I mean, not just mesh personally, like personality-wise, but like, you guys want to have kind of the same vision for how you're going to be taking this journey.
Right.
You don't have to agree the entire way, but you got to at least be kind of on the same page.
Right.
So yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with taking your time to find who the right person is. Because again, we are not going to be heartbroken if we see you for a few sessions and then you leave. You might be like, well, damn, what did I do?
Yeah.
That's our problem. That's not your problem.
Yeah.
Like, that's for us to do personal growth and professional development, all that good stuff. Like,
right.
You do what you got to do. Like, you don't have to worry about, your therapist's feelings if you don't match. Like, it's totally fine.
Okay. I like that. I appreciate that. Another question that just came to my mind, I saw this video on the TikTok, and this gentleman was talking about, he's a therapist himself, and he was talking about, someone had made a comment that he was responding to. The comment said, I tried therapy before, and I found myself just being even angrier. And so he addressed the comment and said, this is completely normal. Imagine it this way. I mean, he compared it to, and I think I was talking about this yesterday, he compared it to going to the gym. When you first go to the gym for the very first time, even if you've worked out before in your life, like if I go to the gym right now, even though I've worked out for years, I'm going to be sore for weeks, and it could be me doing the bare minimum, like walking on an incline treadmill, just doing push-ups, it could be me doing the absolute bare minimum, but I'm going to be sore. But the end goal of, whatever it is that I'm looking to achieve is going to motivate me to at least be consistent, you know what I mean? Or at least push me to be consistent, because motivation is a whole nother, facet.
Yeah, that's a whole other beast. Yeah.
Right. So he mentioned, this is normal. And he said, just think about the fact that you are now becoming more aware of the things that trigger you, the underlying reasons behind your behavior, all of these things. And essentially you are peeling back, the layers of the shell, the onion, whatever, and leaving yourself more and more exposed every single time. So it's natural that you're going to feel more. But if someone came to you with this concern, what advice would you give them?
So another thing that I want to add before I throw the advice piece in is just the idea that one of the main drivers of mental health struggles in general is avoidance.
Right.
And we are great as humans at finding ways to avoid.
Yes.
And it makes natural sense that you would avoid things that are painful, uncomfortable, right? Like that makes logical sense.
Yes.
But avoiding for too long prevents you from actually dealing with, handling, and coping with different things. So I think another point to that is one of the reasons that people feel an influx of negative emotion when they start engaging in therapy, whether it be anger, sadness, what have you, is because you've removed that avoidance block. You are now actually facing these things, dealing with these things, approaching them as opposed to avoiding them.
Right.
And so it's completely natural to have those reactions. And I would agree that if you can kind of push through that pain to consistently approach, that is the gist of how therapy works. You continue approaching, continue working with it, and the pain becomes less and less as you work through things. Advice I would give for that is to be open with your therapist about what it is that you're feeling and what you're experiencing, because they're likely going to expect something like that, or at least can help you process those things in the moment, which is also a great growth and learning tool, because learning how to recognize your emotions, like you said, becoming very aware of what you're feeling, like learning to recognize our emotions and understand what is driving them is huge. And it's not something that we're taught how to do at all. Like, we're not taught as children, we're not taught as adults. Like, we're not taught how to do those things.
Absolutely.
And funnily enough, like when you say, like, I find myself feeling angry, like that person is feeling angry, that is the most widely accepted emotion in our society. So that is going to be the easiest thing for you to express. And more often than not, it's not always anger that you're feeling. There's something below that is, triggering that, or is, there's another emotion below that is not being addressed or acknowledged, and it's being expressed with anger. But anyway, my advice would be to talk with your therapist about it. Just be upfront. Like, I am feeling this way. These things are coming up for me, and I'm feeling that it's a barrier for me wanting to come back every week, or it's getting in the way of me being able to actually focus on what you're telling me. Whatever it is that's coming up for you, bring it to the room, because that's the place to talk about it, and just address those things, because it is a natural part of the process that can happen. And so being able to just be open about those things, like your therapist isn't going to be shocked or pissed off that you're upset about something. Like, that's data. That's data for us to work with and look through and find exactly. So, like, what are the triggers? What are the learning all of the things about yourself, which again is not going to be comfortable in those learning moments, but it's going to be extremely beneficial moving forward, knowing those things about yourself.
Absolutely.
Yes, I would just say be open about it and give yourself some grace. That would be my other advice, is give yourself the grace to feel those feels. Like, it's okay to feel those feels. Like, feeling angry doesn't mean therapy isn't working. It could mean the exact opposite. Like, oh, shoot, it's working. It's bringing up some stuff that I didn't recognize.
It's happening.
I would say lean into it, give yourself some grace, and express those things with your therapist so that you can really dig into it and figure out what it is that's causing those angry feelings, or whatever negative feelings might be coming up in response to the treatment process. So again, it might be something that's grounded in the work that you're doing together and how you're approaching it. And if your clinician doesn't know that, then y'all just gonna be sitting in a room getting pissed off every hour. Every time you're sitting together. Like, so just communicate it the same way that you're open and honest about whatever it is that you've experienced and what you wanted to work on. Like, it's completely okay to be honest about what you're experiencing in the moment through the process as well.
Okay. Thank you. Raylene also asks, or says, another question is, when do you stop therapy? Is it when the trauma or whatever is going on doesn't affect you anymore? Or is it dependent on a person-by-person basis?
I would absolutely say that's a person-by-person basis, because only you really know kind of what you have to work on and what you kind of need support through. I will say there are times that I'm working with clients who just feel like they just want somebody there to talk. I just need somebody to talk with, and that is understandable. But again, there are some therapists who do very evidence-based work, and so they don't necessarily subscribe to like the talk therapy type of situation, and so they might refer you out to a different provider if you need more of that just supportive therapy. But essentially, if you come into therapy and you have some specifically stated goals, and you've reached those goals, then I would say it's a good time to take a break and see how you do, right? Like, let's say you spent some time building emotion regulation skills, right?
Right.
You did your thing. You built some skills, like you've learned what your therapist had to convey to you. Now it's time to spread your wings and go out and kind of see how you handle yourself and how you can use these skills. And
Right.
that doesn't mean that you're just left on your own to fly forever, but hopefully leaving therapy, you're leaving not only with those skills, but also with, again, that awareness and knowledge of like, hey, when do I know that I need a little bit more support and I'm not quite, at my 100% or even my 80% when I can still manage. So being able to recognize when you might need to go back, like, right, like it doesn't mean that if I've done therapy, I don't ever need to go. No, you can always return, right? Because life is hard and things come up that might be difficult to process. Life be lifing, and it does not ask you if you bought a ticket or not. It just knifes at you and does its thing. So, it doesn't like you can complete an entire, like, for instance, you can complete an entire trauma focused treatment, and be good to go, do your thing, and perhaps you have another really just stressful event come up, and you've got your skills, you've got your toolbox, but you're like, I need a little bit of support through this. I need like some boosters kind of thing. Right. You always, you can always return to therapy and boost those skills again, or bolster that skill set that you've already built. And I do think there are times when your clinician might be telling you before you feel you're ready, like, hey, we built these skills. I see it in you. I'm confident in you. And you're like, wait, no, don't push me out of the mix. Please, no. Like, wait, please, no. Like, please, sir, I may have some more.
Right. Have some more therapy, sir.
And so we might kind of push you out. Like, no, I want you to apply and see how you fare in the world. And again, that does not mean that you're not welcome to return. But yeah, I would say, if you have, because again, I work very evidence-based, and so we have very clear goals that we set at the beginning of treatment, and we work towards those goals through various different means. But my goal is not to keep you in therapy forever. I want you to be able to go and do your thing and live your life with the skills that you've gained.
Right.
And so again, I think it also harkens back to like, what are your goals? What are you trying to get out of therapy? Are you looking for just somebody to vent to every week?
Right.
If that's the case, then you might just have a lifelong therapist. If you're looking to reach specific goals, you might have a shorter journey with the therapist, and then some breaks in between, and then you come back again later, or you have that one journey. Like, I think it looks, again, individual differences everywhere, and so I think it really varies. But yeah, I would be mindful about just what it is that you're trying to get out of it, and if those goals have been met. It might feel scary, but you're ready. Like, you reached your goals, you're ready.
Yeah.
Give it a try, and again, see how you can utilize those skills, and see how you can life through life. And like it'll just it's like it's a trial and error in a way, but always knowing that therapy is always going to still be there. You can always come back. So leaving it does not mean that it's a no re-entry kind of a thing. Like, you're always welcome to come back to therapy. So I feel like it can be hard to know, but that can also be a conversation you have with your clinician. Like, hey, how would I know? Because so for instance, when I like on my side of it, we make treatment plans, right? Like, so I work with my client, we develop a treatment plan of what our goals are and how we're going to reach those goals. And in that treatment plan, at the end of it, it's kind of, how do you know when it's time for termination of therapy?
Right.
When XYZ goals have been met, when anxiety levels have been diminished to XYZ level. You kind of outline those things.
Right.
And that's shared, again, that is shared with the client, so they're not surprised. They're like, oh, wait a minute, we're done when I get to, whatever session or whatever level of anxiety. Like, it's again, it's very, it's a shared decision type of thing. So it's upfront and clear. Like, these are our goals, and this is how we'll know when those goals have been met. And so that's another way to really have an understanding of like, oh, Am I ready to go? Yeah, we have these very concrete ways to measure it as well.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, just having those conversations and really, um, yeah, just being aware of what it is that you're trying to get out of things is the most important piece of it.
Yeah.
I'm going to stop there. I feel like I'm rambling in circles.
It's okay. I really like the idea of, when anxiety levels have reached this, because as we were talking about yesterday during our little chat, we each know someone who has been so deep in depression that they don't even realize kind of where they are in the depression until things start happening, or something shifts, or they become aware of something. And on the other side of that, when we've been in a situation for so long, or when we've been struggling with anxiety, or struggling with an eating disorder or whatever, we don't realize the progress that we've made, until a concrete example is given, sometimes, because we still see ourselves as that person, we still see ourselves as our flawed selves, or our broken selves, or the person who first got to therapy 3 years ago, and we don't recognize the growth that we make. And for my clients, I tell them all the time the power of journaling, to go back and literally just reread your journal entries from 3 months ago, 4 months ago, 6 months ago. And it doesn't have to be anything profound, but just, look at the way that you spoke to yourself, look at the way that you addressed yourself. Look at the things that you journaled about, maybe before it was like everything was a struggle, whereas, slowly but surely you began, getting out of bed was a little bit easier. Getting to work was a little bit easier. And now you journal about your goals and your aspirations, instead of, life just being super heavy at every moment and every turn. So yeah, it's really powerful to have some sort of tangible, concrete examples, whether it be through the observation of your therapist, or their notes, or like a survey, or a self-efficacy questionnaire.
How spell try?
How do you spell try?
Yeah.
T-R-Y. He's like, proceed. You see his hand. Oh, DJ. Diana's waving at you. Oh, goodness. Now he's an old man coughing. But yeah, I think that's really... because I feel that results are what everyone is after. Being able to see, feel, etc. results. Going back to the gym example, that's one of the reasons why people get discouraged in the gym, because they keep going to the scale. But when we keep going to the same unit of measurement, that's just so widely accepted to measure progress, we might not be able to tell that we're making progress. Whereas, you didn't even recognize that, your genes fit differently. Or, you have more energy throughout the day, or whatever. Whereas, when it comes to therapy, you might not recognize that you've made progress because, you still cry a lot. But it's like, crying a lot doesn't equate you not making progress.
Right.
That just might be the way that your body releases. Like, that's something that my mom is like, tears are like no for my mom. If you cry, she's like, oh, we can't do this anymore. I gotta go. And then she just avoids it at all costs. And I tell her all the time, like, I cry all the time. Sometimes I'll just listen to a song and I just start crying. It's not... I'll just think of something, or a memory will come back, or whatever. And in her mind, it's a way to avoid things. And I said, well, it's not, but if that's how you perceive it, then you avoid people who cry. So who's doing the avoiding? I know for me sometimes, depending on what I'm talking, DJ, please stop. Thank you. Depending on the reason why I'm crying, I might have to take a moment, because I really won't be able to verbalize or articulate or whatever, because, it turns into the, that kind of thing. But, yeah. But for the most part, I can still communicate while I'm crying. Me crying doesn't mean that I'm trying to, get out of a situation or avoid talking about something or blah, blah, blah. But she's so fixed in that truth or belief that, it's just it's just what it is. Raylene says, yeah, that's true. Physical reactions are different for different people. And DJ writes poop in the chat. Thank you, DJ. Anywho, another question I would like to ask.
Oh, I'm just remembering last night. The jokes are continuing. It's wonderful.
Right. Raylene said he's trolling for real. Right. My little son.
He just cried. He cried to poop.
Nobody cried about poop. That's a laughing face. It's a crying face, but it's like you're laughing so hard you're crying type face. I don't know how to explain this to you. Another question that I was going to ask, again, based on my experience with my therapist, who was wonderful, how can you as a client conquer the guilt of, like, pretty much everything going great with your therapist, but then there's this one thing, that you want to give them some criticism on, but you feel bad for, like, complaining because pretty much everything else is going great.
Mommy,
so you don't feel like you have a right to complain.
That is, yeah. So, first, you should have no guilt about your experience that you are having with your therapist. There's nothing to feel guilty about. There's nothing to feel guilty about, right? Like, because I think we talked about this a little bit, like, access is hard. So when you get somebody, it's like, I must cherish them as they are, no matter what.
I love you.
It's like,
I love you.
You can do no wrong. I'm not worthy. No, that is not true.
Yeah.
I just put stop.
That there's this, like, power dynamic, and in a way that there is, because there's a different knowledge base, right? But the power is not, I don't think the power is this way, because, okay, your therapist might have the therapy knowledge, but you are also the expert in the room on yourself.
Right.
You need it on you. And
that's so true.
There's an equal playing field there. And so I like to emphasize that, because that sometimes can alleviate that feeling of, like, I can't say this. Again, I would argue this is your hour, or your 45, however long your session are. This is your session. This is your time. These are your goals. This is this is your journey, and so you're going to get out of it what you put into it. If there's something that's not working for you, it is completely within your rights to speak up on it. And I would say another green flag would be how, a green or red flag, I would say, is how your therapist responds to that.
Yes.
If they are open to your criticism, to your comments, to you sharing your experience of them, and willing to understand where you're coming from and all of that, like, green flag, and make adjustments, not just hearing you, like, I heard you, and and willing to make adjustments accordingly. Major green flag, right? If they respond in a very dismissive or just non-responsive kind of a way. Major red flag, and it's time to consider maybe moving on elsewhere, because that's not the therapist for you.
Right.
I'm sorry, I forgot your question. I kind of talked myself.
No,
how
do you alleviate? You were on it. You were on it.
That's the other thing, though. I would take some time to really examine why are you feeling guilty about this? Are you in the process, like, are you trying to protect their feelings? Are you is this part of kind of how you operate in your life, just trying to, like, protect other people, or like, are you a people pleaser in a way? Like, a lot of those things can play into how you interact with your therapist as well. If you are, if you are a person who likes to say yes all the time and please people, it's going to be very difficult for you to give your therapist some negative feedback.
Right.
But I would argue, if you were, like, think about any other professional you are paying for a service. If it was just right, except for one thing, and that thing was glaring or very important to you, you're going to speak on it and ask for it to be rectified, because
it's very true.
It is your right as the consumer. We don't consider ourselves consumers of mental health, but you are. We all are. We are consuming a service from somebody, and we're paying for that in some way, whether it be with our time, our money, or our effort. We are putting forth something for this. And so, I would take ownership in that, and to kind of boost your confidence to be able to speak on that.
Yeah.
Because the guilt that you're feeling is it's manufactured, essentially. Guilt is not a natural emotion.
Exactly.
It's something that we manufacture based on the thoughts that we have about whatever it is that's going on.
Right. The story I'm telling myself is that I have to be grateful because I got a therapist in the first place. Or I have to be exceptionally grateful because I got a black female therapist. I got like the golden goose egg of therapists, and I should just be happy that I found it.
Like, so can it be both, though? Can you be thankful that you have this and also have an issue that you need to address, right?
Right.
That therapist, your therapist is human as well.
Right.
And again, like it's I can't emphasize enough just the importance of being willing to speak on what it is that you need, what you want, what's working, what's not working. And I think that's a reason why I feel like the green flag goes to a therapist who is willing to open up that conversation to let you know, hey, this is a place for you to tell me what's good, what's not. Like, I don't want to have you sitting here through an hour that is not beneficial for you or not effective in some way.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, clinicians want to be effective. We want to help you. We want to feel that we are making a difference in your life, not just chit-chatting for an hour to kill your time, and take your money. Like, that is not the goal, or at least it should not be. And so I think just giving yourself that grace of like, oof, okay, I'm having a human moment of, these conflicting feelings. It is okay to address things that are not working with your therapist.
Yes, and I would
it's perfect in every other way. Like,
right. And I would add to that based on another conversation that we had that Raylene was also a part of. Oh, I mentioned it to you when it came to saying no. One of the things that you could do is, delay the response and things like that. But another really good way, while still direct, but sometimes even just this like face-to-face type thing is daunting when it comes to sharing is, email your therapist. Utilize the app that you have. You know what I mean? If you just need to get it out, just say, and I would add to include how you're feeling about it. I feel guilty telling you this, or I feel guilty saying this, but blah, 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 and share your truth, because then they can help you address, again, like you mentioned, the guilt behind it, as well as, the concern that you're having. Raylene also asks, have either of you had guilt for just talking to your therapist about your life? I've had that, and I literally had to check whether therapists have people to talk to, which apparently they do, as I was worried about them listening to my or so many other people's troubles. Raylene.
That just warmed my heart. That was very sweet and so considerate. I need to plug myself in here. Okay, that was so sweet.
Yeah.
I'm happy that was so sweet. Like, oh my goodness, I don't even know where to start. I'm just like, oh my goodness, that is so thoughtful. Therapists absolutely have people to talk to, and if they don't, that is problematic. Therapists have their own therapists. Therapists have their colleagues. They have, depending on where they're at, they might have a supervisor. Right? Like myself as a training clinician, I have a supervisor that I'm able to talk to about. Like, for instance, if I do have a very stressful session with a client, or just a very heavy emotional session, I do have a place that I can directly go and kind of debrief or unload a bit, and immediately kind of talk through what I'm going through. And so, I feel like that's a pretty common feeling, because the therapy client relationship is very different than any other relationship we have, right? Like, as the client, you're coming in and you're bearing your soul. You are just pouring your heart out, sharing all of the ins and outs of your life. Your clinician does not share any of those things. We don't reciprocate that.
Right.
And so it feels very one-sided in that way. And so I think that's a very natural feeling. It's like, God, I'm just coming in, just dumping all my stuff, and this person is just soaking it all up like a sponge, and I don't know what they're doing afterwards. Like, it feels very strange. Like, it does, and I get that, and I think it's very sweet that and just shows a lot of empathy that that you're concerned in that way for your clinician. But yeah, we have places to vent. We're all right.
Yeah, Raylene says, the one-sidedness of it feels really weird. I can absolutely understand. And welcome in, Jared. How are you, love? If you have any questions, today we are chatting with my really wonderful friend, Diana. She is a clinical psychologist in training. She's a doctoral candidate. So if you have any questions that you'd like to ask a therapist in training, feel free to drop your questions in the chat. But yeah, I love that. And it's funny because if that's something that exists in our regular life, like me, for example, I'm the person, which I was manufacturing this, I love that word, on my own. Yes, DJ?
We ran out of tissue in my room.
Oh, there's a tissue right there.
We ran out.
Yeah, we're going to have to go to Walmart and get like 18 boxes of tissue because the sniffles are real. In my personal life, I am a people person. Buddy, can you go to your room and blow your nose? Go to your room and blow your nose, please. Go. Blow it all out. Blow as hard as you can. I found myself, I'm a people person. I'm a huge extrovert. And I found myself connecting with people as almost as their therapist or as their life coach immediately, right? I'm like, hey, you're wonderful, but I see you got some problems. Let me fix you. And so they would share their entire life story with me, and I would make connections and things like that. And then slowly but surely, the relationship became very one-sided. Because what did they reach out to me for? When they were having struggles, or when they were having issues, or when they had concerns. And then I'd feel so appalled and hurt. And how did we get here? When in reality, I did it. It was me. It was how I began the relationship in the first place. And, I would think, well, why is there no reciprocity in this relationship? Well, because that person is not volunteering themselves to fix me.
You are a therapist.
Exactly. My biggest frustration, though, it wasn't necessarily the coming to me with the struggles part. It was the coming to me with the same struggles over and over and over and over and over and over and over, because I'd given them advice, but they hadn't taken it. And so they're just like, and another thing, my husband still does that thing that I told you about. And I'm like, I shared with you how you could take steps to alleviate that, or, have a conversation, maybe get a couples therapist or a marriage counselor or whatever, so you can have a conversation. I would even offer, like, I'll be the mediator in your conversation. I'll speak to your husband by himself, same way my therapist did when I had a group therapist with my ex. She had one session with me by myself. She had a session with him by himself.
And then one together?
So we had, like, the first one together, one separate, and the last one together. Because we ended up not continuing because he said his work schedule was too hectic. Mind you, she was very flexible. As you were speaking about earlier, it was never like, all right, Tuesdays at 10, that's it. That was never the case. And I found her through BetterHelp, like I showed you. And essentially how it is with scheduling is it's like you see your therapist's whole schedule for like a certain number of days, like not into the infinite future, but maybe for the next 7 days, you can see their availability. So you can choose, like maybe you have a day off during the week randomly and we can do a morning session that day, or maybe whatever. It's got to be in the evening. Okay. Yeah, it was really helpful. Like, again, we were talking about, the accessibility of it. It makes it really accessible. But, yeah, so I had to recognize, again, that I was doing this to myself. And, once I realized that, first of all, I could tell these people that they can pay me to do this, and I will absolutely be your life coach. I would love to continue to walk you through these problems. But I feel, and I'm sure there's some psychology behind this, that there's a difference in the effort that people put forward when they're paying for something versus something that's free, right?
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. Oh, 1,000%. Like,
right.
We had this conversation in my training clinic because initially,
he asked me to charge
she was not charged. And then we made the department made the argument of beginning to charge students. And we were all like, what? This is crazy, because we were all about accessibility.
Yes.
Like, no, you're going to make it inaccessible to the students, even though it's literally a $5 session fee, which is like, that's the best thing.
Coffee.
You get the $5. Not no therapy.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I digress. The conversation was essentially on the research that actually supports that. That when, clients are paying for their services, even if it is, as low as a $5 charge. They are much more invested, not only in attending regularly, but engaging in the therapy sessions and engaging in the skill building and just engaging in the process more.
Right.
Because it's the psychology of getting your money's worth. Essentially, I mean, that is not the scientific term, but that's essentially what it boils down to. When you're coming out of your pocket for something, you're going to make sure that you're getting what you're paying for.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So, we live and learn or whatever. Getting there. Just, that's been a struggle that I've had personally, which is just asking people to pay me or telling people to pay me, not asking.
Yeah.
Telling.
Tell me, do you want this service again? You won't pay me.
Right. That part. It should be that simple. It is that simple.
It is.
And a lot of things in life are really that simple. Whenever emotions are involved, then we say things are complicated. But the reality is, no, it's not. You can feel how you feel. I'm not going to diminish. I'm not going to belittle the way that you feel. But, if we look at things objectively and we zoom all the way out, this is what's happening. Like, I love to give people the example of someone, having their day ruined by going to the grocery store. Because they're in line at the grocery store and, the person in front of you is getting checked out. But the person behind you decides to say, oh my goodness, it's taking forever. Isn't this taking such a long time? Maybe the cashier is new. Maybe the person didn't know. Oh, maybe they don't have enough money. Are they paying in pennies? They go off and on and on and on and on.
Down the negativity slide.
Yes, and then they're just spewing it at you and they're waiting for you to engage. So then now, instead of just them talking to themselves and having this conversation and this negativity and all these unnecessary comments just festering, now they can spew it on you and they can share it with you. When in reality, yes, if we look at what's actually happening in real life, in reality, you were at the grocery store, you're second in line, the person in front of you is having their groceries rung up by, the cashier named Sarah. That's what's actually happening. The person behind you has this perception or this expectation for things to be super fast and mega expedited and all these things, and they expect their experience to happen this specific way, otherwise it's a problem. But that's a personal expectation. It doesn't have anything to do with what's actually happening. So I mentioned in another stream, my healing journey started with holding myself accountable for my passive aggressiveness, because here I am getting super upset and frustrated that my partner didn't wash the dishes because he just walked past the sink, and I'm like thinking to myself, isn't it common sense that you see dishes in the sink and you wash them? The answer is no. And I had to realize that the only person that was affected by this passive aggressiveness was myself. I'm the only one that's frustrated. He's over there like falling asleep on the couch, completely blissful.
Having a good, yeah.
Right. So the story that I was telling myself was that he doesn't want to contribute to the responsibilities of the house. He's completely ignoring the dishes because he believes that it's my job. All kinds of things. He doesn't care about how I feel. He saw my angry face and just doesn't care why I'm angry. Just all kinds of stuff. Right. But yes, DJ.
He texted me.
I know, DJ. Raylene said that she hopes you feel better and that you should drink some water since you have a cough.
I'll be better soon.
You'll be better soon?
Yeah.
All right, dude. Right. It's like, I'm not feeling good. I'm like, ugh. You sound kind of gross.
We hear you, baby. We hear you, poor sweetheart.
Right. But even just coming into that awareness of being able to separate what you are thinking from what's actually happening. And just really saying it, the story that I'm telling myself, even, when speaking to your therapist, the story that I'm telling myself is that I should be, like I said, super grateful because everything is wonderful. But, this one thing is like not quite there or whatever. And I feel really guilty about it, et cetera, et cetera. But that also feels a lot better to hear than, I feel like you're a terrible person because you didn't wash the dishes.
Yeah.
Right? It feels less accusatory. It feels less like you're attacking my character. Now I can hear it as, okay, these are the things that your mind is telling you. You know, it's not necessarily what you believe. I mean, in the moment you believe it to be true, but
Right.
yeah.
That may not actually be an accurate representation of reality of what's going on.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. It's really wild what our mind does. The brain is a oof.
Yes, oof is the best. The
It's
best word
It is oof.
to describe it.
The gymnastics that it can do. Ain't got nothing on the brain. Like the gymnastics is it's wild what our brains will do to twist and justify and make sense out of things.
Yes.
And narrate our own, provide our own narration to what we see going on, to our perception. It's hardly ever accurate.
Right.
Like it created this whole, you were living in this whole like story of just like, this is awful, and how dare he? And it was really just like, I didn't know you wanted me to do the dishes. Like,
right. Right.
Like, was it that? Like, so yeah, I feel like it's really easy for our brains to do that, and it's that's one of the reasons why I love like CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, because it shows you exactly what you just described. We call it the CBT triangle, how your thoughts, your feelings, so like, how your thoughts, your feelings, and events are all connected. And how in one of those things can completely alter your reaction to something.
Okay.
Like, so for, like the example I always use is like, okay, if I'm like walking down the street and I see my friend, and I wave, hey girl, I mean I yell, hey girl, but I wave, and that person does not acknowledge me at all. So that's the event. I see my friend, I wave, not acknowledged. And I start thinking, well, shoot, did I piss her off? Did I do something wrong? Like, why did she wave at me? Like, why? Like, what's happening? And so those are my automatic thoughts. And that might lead me to then act a certain way. Okay, I might ignore her the next time I see her. Like, well, whatever, I don't care.
Right.
I might start to her like, girl, what's wrong? Are you mad at me? Did I do something? Or what have you. I can have any type of behavior in response to that thought process. Take the same event. I see my friend, I wave, they do not respond. But my thought process is different. I'm like, she probably didn't see me. She was busy doing whatever. Like, it's no big thing. That thought is going to lead to completely different behavior. I'm going to go on about my day like it was nothing. It's not going to impact me in that same way. Right? Kind of going down that negative thought slide. So yeah, it's really, really wild how our thoughts and our emotions are just completely connected, and how changing one of those things can really alter how you feel, how you behave, and how you perceive a situation. And so taking some time to get out of your mind, like get out of your head, not your mind, but get out of your mind, get out of your head and talk about it.
Yes.
To help you to see those different things. Right?
Absolutely.
So, it's just
over communicate. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Because nothing bad can ever occur if you over communicate. Almost 90% of the time, it's what we don't say that's causing so much of the struggle and strife, because we assume and we have these expectations. I mean, we have it with children, which that alone is just mind blowing. They're too old to be doing that, or whatever. And I'm like, they're really not though. Like, I used to tell people all the time. I'm like, if I'm 26 years old, no, I'm not. But if I'm 26 years old and I can't control myself around chicken wings, how do I expect my child to be able to control themselves around a puddle? It's like an undeniable urge to just, I gotta go jump in the puddle. Gotta jump the puddle.
Truly.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, because I don't think people realize.
I don't know how the kiddos are expected to.
Right.
But yeah, like it's
just saying.
The expectations we have for ourselves, for others, for the outcome of any situation. Like, we are setting ourselves up every time for good, bad, or indifferent, depending on what those expectations might be.
And we're so attached to the outcome too. It's like, and once it happens once, we expect it to always happen that way. I was talking to Hannah yesterday about having a conversation with our parents, with our mothers about something, and having an adverse react, like they give us or they react poorly to whatever it is that we share. And all it takes is that one time, and it's like, well, I'm never going to talk to mom about that again.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's it. I don't feel safe enough to even try. Like, maybe I'll try again. Maybe I'll try one more time. But for sure, after that second time, I'm done. Because, again, now my mind is completely rewired and is going to tell me a new story, which is that if you share this with your mom or anything related to this kind of topic or subject or whatever, she's not going to like it. She's not going to react well. It's going to be an argument. It's going to be, you know.
It's not okay.
It's not okay. It's not okay. It's not safe. It's going to be uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Don't do it. Don't do it. You know, and as much as people will encourage us, well, just try again. Just try again. It's like, it's not that easy. You know, it's not that easy to just try again, especially if it's not broken down, you know, like you just broke down the triangle of CBT, to see it that way. You know, all I know is my mind keeps telling me if I do this, this is going to happen, and that's it.
Right.
This is the only, you know, it's this event, this is always going to be the outcome, you know, and then it's going to lead to these thoughts, and then I'm just going to be jacked up for the rest of the day, week, whatever, you know, because it doesn't feel good for people to react poorly, or sometimes it's not even reacting poorly, it's just reacting in a way that we didn't expect them to, or want them to, or ever, and yeah, like you said, we're just setting ourselves up for these kinds of things.
I mean, yeah, that sounds a little victim way, like you brought that on yourself, like you set yourself up for that. Like, that's
right.
Not how we need it. But it in a way, it is. Like,
yeah.
You know, if you are, and it's way easier said than done. I don't know how to do this either, but like clearing your mind of expectations, clearing, like that, I think is one of the keys to happiness. Like, truly just like not having any expectations, because then you're not, you know, you're not caught off guard or disappointed in those ways. But I don't know how realistic that is, because I think our brains naturally try to predict things. You know? Like it's just, I mean, that's how we operate through life. That's how we make judgments and decisions, right? Trying to predict what the outcome is going to be.
Yeah.
But I think you're absolutely right. If regardless of what type of disclosure you're making or type of, you know, information you're sharing with someone, how they react can be extremely impactful. And while we can't necessarily change how other people react to us, like we can never impact someone else's reaction, we cannot control that. I think it is at least something that we can be mindful of when we're reacting to other people, right? When people are sharing things with us. Yeah. Just to be mindful of those things, that how you react to something can be very impactful, good, bad, or indifferent, you know, to how somebody feels about not only what they've shared with you, but sharing something with you again.
Yes, exactly.
It communicates a lot of different things, because just like you said, it's like, oh, no, okay, it's not safe, I'm not, you know, this is not appropriate to even talk about. Like, it communicates so many different things. You know, if you're dismissive or just kind of avoidant or shut it down, you know, even if it's like, I don't know, it can be just like, I have no idea how to react to this, but I appreciate you sharing this with me. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Better than just like, what? You know,
over communicating.
Like,
yeah.
I mean, you don't have to have a poker face. Like, you're allowed to be human and have reactions, but you know, just being considerate of that in how you react, I think is something that all of us as humans can really learn from and do better about.
And even though, you know, not having or being completely free from expectations, like, that might not happen in this current lifetime, but what we can do is adjust our expectations. For example, I know that if I ask my 6-year-old to do something, it's going to be done slowly. It's going to be done probably with a lot of mess. There's not going to be any sense of urgency. And I might have to repeat it a couple times. But that's all okay. Like, if I adjust my expectations to that, then when those things happen, it doesn't feel like I'm not snapping. I'm not angrily repeating over and over. I'm not coming for him and you know, why are you always so slow? You know, insulting his character and things like that, because I've adjusted my expectations to look like this. You know, I've adjusted my expectations to have to repeat myself multiple times. Which, you know, I hear from my best friend all the time. Her son is 13, I think. And she tells me how much that's just like the bane of her existence, having to repeat herself multiple times. And I'm like, boo, it just comes with, a person who hasn't been on the earth as long as we have. And even for those of us that have been, we repeat ourselves.
Yeah.
It's just, and this would go into a whole other conversation, was just how we view children. We don't view children as equals, we view them as less than. So it's like, you're speaking to your subordinate and you expect them to just, be ready and listening and everything all the time, when that's not the case. They just don't have certain skills. They haven't developed certain skills yet, but I think that kind of goes back to what you mentioned as far as the power dynamic feels imbalanced when you're speaking with a therapist, because, they have the therapy knowledge. But again, we have to remember that we are experts in ourselves. And if we adjust our expectations there and see it as such, I am an expert in myself, you are an expert in this field, this is where we can come together and see each other as equals. Because I think that we kind of put that on ourselves as far as, not feeling good enough to share something that we're feeling guilty about with our therapist. We put ourselves down and we make ourselves feel small because we tell ourselves that we're on a lower level. Raylene says, yeah, that's a valid response, saying, I don't know what to say. Actually, most of the time, I tend to appreciate that instead of them trying to come up with something. Right. Exactly.
Bird needs to take a bath.
I know. Very awkward.
Can I say hi to Jones?
Nova says, hey, y'all. That's Jones's daughter. She's 2 weeks older than Kairu. And she is the cutest bundle of, my goodness gracious, baby girls. She's beautiful. Hey, Nova girl.
Hey, Nova.
Oh, my goodness. But all right, Diana. I know that we could probably talk for like 6 hours.
Right? We'll be back, so
Exactly. She will be back, y'all. She will be back.
I will be back.
But to wrap up our conversation today, thank you so much for being here. Is it possible for people to work with you directly at this point, or not yet?
At this point, no. I am unlicensed and still in training, so I am not permitted to just be like giving my services away.
Okay.
But one thing something that I can provide is like if people have questions about like the graduate school process, applying, what my experience was like in it, kind of what it looks like. I'm happy to answer questions about that directly.
Okay.
I'd be happy to share my email. Let me see if I can figure out this chat here. I don't be doing the Google things too much. Hold on. Nope, that ain't it. All right. So yeah, I'm gonna put my my email in the chat, and I'd be happy to answer any questions about. Yeah. Okay. About like I said, the graduate school process, my experience, all of those things, and. Yeah, I cannot provide clinical services yet, but I can answer general questions about like searching for services, looking, what to ask therapists, things like that. But I would not be able to provide any clinical services or advice at this point.
Got it.
Flash the disclaimer on the screen.
Right. Disclaimer.
Yeah.
But yes, perfect. I appreciate you so much for being here, Diana. She will be back, y'all. She'll be back.
Yeah, this is my absolute pleasure. I am so excited to have kicked this off with you today. And I'm looking forward to many, many more conversations in the future.
Absolutely. In addition to Diana coming back, if you're here in the chat, if you have any topics that you'd like to discuss or would like her to kind of dive into, like she mentioned, as far as the grad school process, as far as just her educational process so far and kind of the things that she's learned, maybe her favorite courses, whatever. Anything like that.
That's whatever you want to ask, and if I am, if I'm educated enough to provide the answer, or if I am authorized to provide the answer, I'm happy to. If it's something that I'm unable to or unqualified to answer, I will just let you know that.
There you go.
And hopefully maybe direct you to somebody who can answer that.
There you go.
So yeah, please, all questions are welcome. No, don't limit yourself, y'all.
But yeah, y'all, that'll be all for today. I'll be back tomorrow morning. around the same time with my cousin Hannah, who also just received her, well, not also, but who received her bachelor's in psychology. And we're going to talk about some things too. Yes. If you are watching this live stream on Twitch, thank you for being here. Thank you for contributing in the chat. Raylene, thank you for all of your wonderful questions. If you are catching this replay on YouTube, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Yes. And if you have any questions or comments that you would like to share, you can go ahead and drop them in the comments. For those of you that are rewatching on YouTube, I'll leave Diana's email address in the description. But again, if you want to or ask her any questions, if she's qualified or if she's able to answer those questions, she'd be more than happy to. But that way y'all can get in contact with her directly. And yeah, it's been a pleasure. I'll see y'all tomorrow. And Diana, you don't have to go, but I'm going to end the stream. So
okay.
I love
Bye, y'all. See you next time.
I love all you people, and I will see y'all tomorrow.